Hello and welcome back to the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. We are wearing black for Lena's funeral. Everybody is sad in the realm, at least everybody who doesn't have an agenda. But we do have an agenda, and it's to dig into everything that's been going on in House of Dragon this week. I'm here with my regular co-host Fami, and we have a lot to think about. This was a very heavy episode, a very rich episode, a very eventful episode, and tensions were high. It's crazy to think that this isn't even the end. This has like regular Game of Thrones season episode 9 vibes. So like how are we feeling today? What do we think of this episode? Just to start.
So we're 7 episodes in out of a season of 10 episodes this season, and I said last episode was my favorite episode, but no, this is my favorite
It's been
episode.
dethroned because wow.
It's so swiftly, and I go a step further. Where from the original Game of Thrones, my favorite episodes were like Baylor, which is season 1, episode 9,
Very
when Ned
good one.
loses his head, Hard Home, which is season 5, episode was it 7 or 9? I don't remember, and then Battle of the Bastards. I love those episodes. This is up there with them, and honestly, I think that this might even. I'll have to give it like another week or two to be sure, but this might be my favorite episode in the entire Game of Thrones world. It was so good.
So many
So
things
much
came
happened.
together. Like
So
it's
much happened.
that's the
I
thing,
was
right? With Game of Thrones, so you have all these amazing, compelling characters, and they're like in different places, but you hardly ever got those episodes with so many big players all together making
yeah,
big moves. To
yeah,
unless it was like towards the end of the series, but
which
here,
was
like
trash.
we're in season 1, episode 7, and everybody is in one place arguing, almost killing each other. These people are all a family. Like all these tensions have been so well planted
Yep,
in the writing, and it's paying off in such a gratifying way. Like I saw so many people last night screaming at their screens.
that was me. Literally, that was me. It was crazy, and we talked about this like in episode 1 or 2 about how the story was a lot more compact because it
Yep,
was just it's a dynastic dispute basically. So because of that,
family
it's
drama.
family drama. We get to see it on the big scale here. We don't have 7 houses, 5 kings. We're just like one family, and it's shaping out to be two sides. As Rhaenyra used the keyword in this episode, the greens, to refer to Alicent and her brood. And if you know, Alicent's kids have
Not
always
you
been very
calling them a
green.
brood like this.
Hey man.
What?
Okay, Alicent's kids,
That's crazy.
Alicent's loved ones,
You can,
Viserys' other
y'all, you can
family.
see where this guy's allegiances lie. He's not
Hey
even trying to
man,
hide it anymore.
hey man, I've been saying it from like episode 1 or 2, man. I'm Team Rhaenyra, you know this, and I'm also Team
Wild.
Daemon now by association because the episode ends with them getting married. But in classic form, we'll get to that later.
Facts.
I really don't know where to start this episode. There's just too much to talk on. I want to like flip a coin and just see where it lands on, and we should just start there. But let's just take chronologically, just
Fine.
because it's
If,
easier
if,
that way.
if that's the case, let's start with the shade. Uncle Vaymond, how far? Vaymond throwing so much shade in this eulogy. Like, wow, wow, wow. Like, and these
Yeah,
reactions were just too much. Damon laughing too. Comedy
Damon literally
gold.
burst out laughing. Like
This
he
guy
couldn't
was
take it
like,
anymore.
"Yo, this is why I live in Pentos. Like this is why I left you people because what the heck? Like it's been 10 years and you guys still can't get it together. That
Yep.
is actually amazing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because they start this episode by the water, and it also ends by the water. There's a lot of imagery regarding fire and water, whereas in Game of Thrones it was a lot more about fire and ice. But with the fire and water familial ties here, I think it's cool because you know, looking at just Lena, she died a Targaryen death of fire, right? Whereas she's being given a funeral in the Valarian tradition with water. And I think it's a good juxtaposition of the two sides that made her who she was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of imagery with that in this episode. Rhaenyra is specifically in marrying Daemon choosing to stick to her fiery side. Her children are Valarians, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot to be said for legacy and history remembering names instead of blood, like Corliss said. But I think that really Rhaenyra being Mrs. Velaryon, she wants to sort of shed that in favor of something that gives her more of a Targaryen vibe for the kind of power that she's seeking to maintain in her quest for the throne, in her quest for what is her birthright. So she doesn't just believe it's her birthright. She has literally been given this as her birthright by her father.
Hmm.
This we already said so much about how he's not doing enough to make sure that it stays her birthright, but I don't know. I think these days I kind of just feel a little bit bad for Viserys, but anyway, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I've put aside my Viserys agenda. He's obviously he could always be doing more, but he's just been through a lot, and he's like an old man in like the twilight of his years. Like him trying to reconcile with Daemon at his wife at Daemon's wife's burial is just kind of shows or highlights how he's just trying to make peace before he goes. You can obviously see that he's every episode I think he's gonna die now because homeboy is just on death's bed or he looks
Everybody's
like he's on
waiting for
death's
him
bed.
to die.
Everybody's waiting for him to die, and his death could be it could be a problematic thing in the world of Westeros, but yeah, we're still at the funeral though. Damon, the funeral was kind of beautiful. I love the duality of people's existences because Westeros is a patriarchal society, and part of what happens is that you always like your father's last name is where all your heritage is derived from, and you see that even with someone like Jon Snow. The fact that his dad was a Stark, but his mom wasn't. That changes how he's referenced in the North, and Lena's death by fire, highlighting her Targaryen side, and her burial by water, highlighting her Valyrian side. I thought was very beautiful. Again, another beautiful character in the world of in this time period in Westerosi history. Um, Dragon Rider Vagar has two badass children who can throw a mean right hook. But we'll talk about that later.
To be clear, we don't condone children throwing right hooks at each other, but if they do it well, I guess we have to commend them just a
Yeah,
little bit.
man, that's a future Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder,
Oh
right
God.
there. But yeah, it was a beautiful funeral. I did feel for Jace because Jace was the only one who, out of all his him and his mom are also grieving, even though they're not allowed to grieve because Breakbones, even though he was important to them, they weren't able to acknowledge that he was important to them. So they were also grieving. As I felt like Jace was able to find a lot of comfort in his cousins because I don't think they've actually met before now because Damon has been in Pentos like this whole time. So I don't think they've
Mhm.
met, but they were able to bond over that grieving at the funeral, and I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah. Uh, I think as far as the funeral is concerned, as far as the funeral is concerned, we see a lot of, I guess, indications as to what the different dynamics are with each person, and what the different relationships have turned into. I mean, you get to see a little bit of how certain people's way of playing the quote unquote game has changed over the years.
Yeah,
And watching Rhaenyra was very interesting because I saw a lot of stuff about how she was looking at Damon, right?
mm.
You know, I think that's kind of in a way it's Miguel Sapochnik being on point, even though people are coming for him about lighting on the beach on Twitter right now. Um, Somebody's actually messaging me right this moment to complain about it. It's like, yo, I didn't see anything. This person is like, yo, like, okay, you know what? I know incest is happening. That's all you want me to know. I don't need to watch this. I can't stress myself because of this. So she
Yeah,
just waiting for the scene to finish. But um, yeah, the way Rhaenyra looks at Damon at Driftmark, after not seeing him for 10 years at this funeral, right? It reminds me a lot of how she looked at him in the Iron Throne Room when he
yeah,
returned from the Stepstones after
yeah,
3 years. It's like
yeah.
you see the way she's walking through people to like
Let's
just
get a
have
better
these
look at
lingering
him.
looks
Yeah,
on him, and
yeah,
she did the same thing back then. It's like, this guy is just so quote unquote dreamy to her,
yeah,
and it's interesting to think that they're soulmates. I mean, even after their time on the beach, um, when she comes in, and I mean the whole thing with her kids, yeah, she comes in and she sees all that stuff, but then later on she calls him uncle, and in my head I'm just like, you want this guy to marry you, stop calling him uncle. Okay, like you need to kind of pick one for the sake of our mental health
Yeah.
as we watch this show. But yeah, speaking of lingering looks, how about the way Laris has been staring at Alicent? Like I think we can find no shortage of words to describe the way he's gazing at her. But I've seen some people kind of theorize that he might be a little bit in love with her. In the books, he's more of like an enigma, sort of like Baelish or Varys that's harder to read. But here it's like, okay, maybe he's not harder to read. Maybe he's just a weirdo that like is trying to kill his whole family just for her
Yeah.
sake. People think he might be a little bit in love with her. I mean, he's really. I mean, he's out here offering more crazy favors. Like towards the end, he's like, "Oh, this was an injustice, bro. Who asked you? You didn't say a single thing this episode, and now you're coming here
Yeah.
to talk about injustice. Nobody
Yeah.
asked for your opinion. Offering to help somebody remove an eye, bro. Who asked you? You already killed your brother and your dad for no reason.
Yeah.
Okay, now Otto is here clenching that hand of
That
the
pin
king pin, just
so
like he's just
tightly.
clutching it for no reason. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Like
I,
how are
I,
we feeling about the way Clubfoot is behaving, and what do you think of Matthew Needham's performance?
I mean, though the performance is a 10 out of 10 because it's like Joffrey in the initial Game of Thrones. I
Hmm.
hated the actor because he was so good at portraying Joffrey. Now
Yeah,
this Clubfoot, he's such an enigma to me, really, because there's something that Littlefinger told Sansa very early on in Game of Thrones. Well, maybe like season 3 or 4. He was like, "What do other people want?" Something that Jerry told in Succession. He told Roman, like, how does this benefit me? And I keep looking at the
how does this
situation
serve my
unfolding.
interests? Yeah,
Exactly. And I keep asking, how does what is happening serve his interests? And it just makes me realize that I have no idea what this man's interests are. Because, okay, obviously we can see that there are two sides to this conflict. There's Team Rhaenyra and there's Team Alicent. He's obviously on Team Alicent. And, but if you think about it, he knows that his brother's kids are, his nephews are Rhaenyra's kids. Why isn't
literally.
he on their side? Why isn't he
That's
on the
such a
side of,
good
like,
question. Maybe he's
I
against his family. Maybe he
yeah,
holds
but
something against
why?
them.
Like,
Maybe it's resentment for being like quote unquote overlooked over the years. It's like this is your blood, but you're choosing power.
you're
But
choosing,
but
yeah.
but but,
So
but it's
it,
not. It's probably deeper than that though, because it can't just be about
yeah,
power. Because you can
it
get
can't
power
be.
by siding with your biological family, right?
Yeah, and you'll even be more power, even because it's like you're like, yeah, you're one of us. You're coming through. You keep recording you, but like,
He's
even
an
just to
asset to
say,
Allison.
yeah, he is literally Allison's great. I think he's more of an asset to Allison than her dad, honestly. And her dad is like
Hmm.
he's like well, her dad is the younger son of
Interesting.
High Garden. He's not like the heir to High Garden. He doesn't command, the lands and the people and the armies. So
Yeah.
if her dad's brother says "fuck you," Otto, you're on your own. He's technically on his own. So, and if he gets fired from being the hand, he's literally on his own. He has no claim to lands or titles or people. But Howland Strong, basically, he doesn't have the Riverlands, but he like Harrenhal is a huge castle. It's a huge defensive point, and he has a lot of land and incomes. But I still don't know what he. Just to say he's in love with like Allison, to me, it's still not like that's not enough. Like, that I
Yeah.
feel like there's something else, and I don't know what it is, and I'm so curious to hear to see what the show, you know, I want to know his motivations because on the ship at the end of the episode, Allison was like he basically went to Allison and like, yo, if you want me to take that a kid's eye, I know a guy that can do that. And Allison obviously now understands who he is and just told him, no, 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 I don't need that, but I'll need you later on. So you can see that like Allison is ready for war. She has
Yeah, she's
all
now
but
kind of
called the banners.
I think she's now making peace with the idea that playing the game dirty is what she needs to do. She was
Yeah,
she was ready to be scolded by her father after what had happened,
yeah.
that night, and then he shows up and he's like,
Good job.
I'm very proud of you. We play a very ugly game, and now for the first time I see that you have the determination to win it, and it reminds me a lot of Game of Thrones season 1 episode 7, where Cersei tells Ned Stark, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. One of the most iconic lines from the series, from an episode that is aptly titled "You Win or You Die." So it's
Yeah.
it's the same vibes, and it tells us a lot about how it's something I said last week. It's not necessarily that history repeats itself. It's that human beings tend to be kind of predictable. So the same lines of thoughts, the same greed, the same quest for power,
Yeah.
it's all still here. And speaking of which, ambition and desire are very interesting things, aren't they? Like
Yeah.
Lena said he hates the gods for making him as they did, and Rhaenyra tells
Yeah.
him in actually one of the kindest moments we see in
Yeah.
either show, that she doesn't hate them for that because he's an honorable man with a good heart, and that
Yeah.
it's a rare thing. But
Yeah.
then she turns around and plans his murder with the guy she actually wants to be with.
Well, I mean, did she plan his murder? I don't. I mean, I know
Oh
there's a lot of.
God.
In fact, I just saw. There's a lot that can be said to that, but I think we should save time to dissect that whole interaction because that's the obviously the closure of the episode, and
Yeah, yeah. There's
the
much to
show
be
leaves
said
us
there
at. There's
since
so
it's
much to be
clearly more
said.
nuanced.
Yeah, it's that. But no, I when Leno was saying all that stuff, man, I just wanted to give him a hug, man, and tell him it's okay to be you, because it was just like you could see that like he felt like a lot of like obviously he had we didn't even talk about him at the funeral. He just lost his sister, and obviously they had a close relationship because his sister had talked about how she missed her brother, and they never
Hmm.
get a chance to see each other again. So he was obviously broken by that. And then this whole conflict happened, and he wasn't there to defend his family, and you can tell that even though they're not the kids aren't biologically his, and him and Rhaenyra's marriage is obviously not like a real it's like a sham marriage as she said, but
Yeah,
he still has a sense of loyalty and love towards them, and like he was
he's
hurting
an
that.
honorable man. Yeah.
Yeah, he was hurting that. But yeah, but honorable man like Ned Stark was an honorable man. Who that one don't help, it's
Yeah,
just
which is why again it's very interesting how things play out just from
yeah,
like the story style of the World of Ice and Fire. It's interesting how
yeah,
things play out by the end. But like you said,
yeah.
we'll kind
We'll
of
talk
touch on
about
that.
that.
So I don't know. I think switching gears back to Damon, isn't it just funny how like whenever he wears that hood, bad things are about to
Yo,
happen.
I've been seeing this meme on Twitter about Kermit the Frog when he's wearing a hood, and that's like whenever his child has to be killed, Damon just
Oh
pulls up
my
in the hood, and
god.
I'm like, yeah,
The Twitter streets are raging right now. Fam, there are
yo,
people saying that Amon looks like Draco Malfoy.
I saw that one. And low key, when I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't
Like,
unsee it.
how can you do this? Like, what's wrong?
Yo, I swear that might actually be my Halloween costume. Just go around with the robe and say I'm Demon Targaryen. Just dye my braids like bleach blonde or something.
Oh Jesus!
Uh,
Like, it's interesting to me, but yeah, I think the acting overall was just magnificent on all fronts
Beautiful,
in this episode.
beautiful,
I can't
beautiful.
even tell who did the best job. Like Olivia Cook, amazing.
Whew,
Paddy
that's a very
Considine,
good
like
one.
Paddy Considine is he's he's really carrying the emotional weight of guilt
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
show.
yeah. He is because he can
He's
see how he created this situation. He can see it. He should have married that 12-year-old girl.
honestly, I think that you might be onto something there
Yeah,
because I think he has more regret than he's letting on. Viserys calling Alicent Emma
Emma. Yeah,
on his
that
way to
was
bed.
one of my favorite parts of the episode. That was one of my
Like
favorite parts of the
I
episode.
actually screamed. Okay, like
Yeah,
because he does it, he realizes he's done it, and
and
then
he
he
gives
just
a shit.
moves on without
He gives a
acknowledging
shit.
it.
He's just like,
Like,
yeah,
good
he's
God
tired.
Almighty!
He's
Wow.
tired. He's
I mean,
tired.
Alison and Kristen's reaction is just like they don't even know what to do. Like they're not necessarily offended. They're surprised, but they're not surprised. It's like, I mean, do we think that actually that they almost see him as kind of senile on some level, or
I think
like
so.
do
I
we think
think
that this is
so.
just absent-minded fatigue, or do they actually think, okay, this guy's losing his mind a bit? Like,
I mean, he's obviously a bit. I mean, there are moments when he tries to command strength, but I think that is not his like default because whenever Allison had seen him in his real form, whenever like they're alone and he's sitting down on the chair and she's just putting blankets over him, it's like she knows that homeboy is not all. I mean, he's mentally there, but like there's just like
he
a
can't take care of
sense
himself
of.
anymore. Yeah.
Exactly, man. He's just like it's one of these things, man. Like my grandma, like she's still strong, but like a lot of the time she will call me like three wrong names before she gets the right name. And like but at least she after she says it, she will recognize she said it. And then she'll
Oh
be
God.
itching, trying to remember that nickname that she used to call me, and then eventually it will come out. And that's what just happened. But the difference is that usually my grandma will care enough to like correct herself. Where like
Yeah, exactly.
Sarah's
Now
just like, all
this
right,
guy is
babe.
not even trying to hide his sadness anymore. I
Yeah,
think he's kind of wondering, like, what was the point of this? I think um his allegiance and undying yet weakly buttressed soft spot for Rhaenyra are sort of a
Yeah.
result of this
Of yeah.
never-ending love for Emma,
For
because
Emma. Yeah.
she's all that he has left of her. And I
Yeah.
wonder if there's a part of him that wishes he wasn't so obsessed with the idea of having a boy all those years ago, because
Exactly.
that is what eventually killed her.
And she
And in
could have been
fact,
alive. Yeah.
um, I wonder if he actually has any regrets about marrying Alicent,
He
because
definitely does. He
I mean,
has
we
to.
got a glimpse of his mixed feelings in episode 3 during the hunt when he was crying in front of that fire, which again, amazing acting from Paddy Considine.
Yeah.
But I mean, how much conflict is he carrying? It's so
Yeah,
much,
he's going
and
through a lot. He's going through a
yeah,
lot, and like he's always backing his daughter Rhaenyra over like his other kids, and you see that in the fight scene, in the conflict that happened after the fight scene in the throne room in Driftmark. But it's I think a lot of it has to do for his love for Emma. I rewatched episode 6 a few days ago, and I recognized there was a parallel when like Daemon was confronted with the same choice that Viserys was, and what Viserys asked was that, can we save the son or can we save the child? Whereas Damon asked, would the mother be okay? So it just shows who's where.
exactly.
It shows where each of their priorities were at those points in their life. Right now, I think if this older Viserys is in that same situation, I think he'll ask the question: would the mother survive? Because he right now obviously calls his current wife by his ex-wife, who's been dead for what, over it was over 10 years, maybe like 12. No, it's like,
She's been dead like 15 years
yeah,
now.
like it's been there like 15 years. Like it's been a long time, and like you can still see that, it's been so much time. But like I don't think you can ever really heal from losing your soulmate. And I think Emma was his soulmate, and that's part of the reasons why he's so fiercely defending, quote and unquote, Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra is Aemon. And he says it to Daemon in the burial scene, something about how your daughters look just like your dead wife, and that's a beauty and a curse at the same time. And I think that he sees a lot of that being reflected in his daughter Rhaenyra.
Yeah, speaking of soulmates, Rhaenyra and Daemon.
Yeah.
Finally, what seems to be the end of their drama and the start of the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
resolving
They happily
their
ever end
soul
after.
ties. I mean, first of all, the people on the internet who are still rooting for them after deriding Cersei and Jamie are still very funny to me. Y'all are making me laugh. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
that.
Someone literally said that no, they can stand for Jamie and Cersei because Jamie's attractive and Damon's not. And I was like, damn, that's cold. That's
What?
cold, dead ass.
Don't let the Matt Smith hype catch you, Sha. But I mean, yet still, Sha. This is a very strong alliance. Everybody thought Damon was crazy when he first broached the idea to Viserys.
Yeah,
He got the like he said, let me marry her. I'll take her to Dragonstone, marry her in the tradition of our house. And the
yeah.
response was, "You are a plague sent to destroy my life."
I say that's your favorite line in this whole thing. Yeah,
Oh
please
my
let's
god,
destroy my
that
life.
line every single time I'm just dying. But yeah, here we are.
But
Well,
maybe
yeah,
Viserys should have listened to him,
yeah,
Like we said this in
because
episode one
yeah,
or two. Viserys needed Daemon. And now you can see, I mean, they got married anyways. So the only thing that would have mattered is that the
which
three
is
kids who are
interesting.
like the three strong kids would have been like Valerians. And then, yeah,
It's actually kind of crazy, the whole marriage thing too. I mean, like first of all, wild as it seems, it really bolsters her claim, and it
it
puts
does.
all the Valerian children in line for the Iron Throne as
It does.
part of the immediate royal family,
Mm-hmm.
including Lena's daughters,
Mm-hmm.
which really clinches the Lord of the Tides and Rhaenys as firm members of Rhaenyra's side of this
Yep.
conflict,
Because
right?
they're pulled in by
Yes,
blood.
and because Rhaenys is talking a lot about blood, Corlys is talking about names. With this, they kind of get the best of both and get the Valerians firmly on their side.
Yep.
Now, it's also very interesting to me that Rhaenyra and Daemon's union is proposed by her. It shows how much unabashed control she's gained over her own agency
Mm-hmm.
in the past decade. She tells the truth to him and herself, and she wants to not just strengthen her claim but fulfill her desires. So
Yeah.
in her mind, she's a grown woman now, and their relationship is more age appropriate,
Yeah.
so to speak. So nothing really stands in their way.
Yeah.
including apparently the terrible optics of doing this right after her husband of 10 years was just burned alive and without her father's knowledge or blessing. So I guess,
Oh.
I guess kids, when you get to a certain age, you can just marry without telling your parents. Though
As
if you
long
come from where
as
I come from, don't try it too. Don't say,
as
don't,
long as
don't
you're not
can't say it's me
Nigerian.
that told you
As
to do
long
it.
as you're not Nigerian. Oh.
Hmm.
But
It's,
yeah,
it's, it's, it's interesting.
it's very interesting. But that whole like the Damon Rhaenyra, honestly, when I kind of like was hearing all the casting news and everything, I didn't realize there was going to be a time skip. So I thought, okay, they'll get
Hmm.
married like further down the line. But yeah, when I started seeing all the time skips, I was like, we might see a marriage this season. I know Bankole told me someone had spoiled it for him, and I was like, whoa. When I just
Yeah,
saw this happen, I was like, you know
this
what?
is like what in episode 2 when he told us that, right?
Yeah. So
That
it
was
was
so
only
sad for
it
him.
was sad, but like, at the same time you didn't have to wait. It wasn't like they spoiled something 3 seasons ahead, It was just something very,
Yeah.
very short.
Speaking of which, the pacing here is very cool. Like
Yeah.
each episode is delivering just enough without overstaying its welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't think there's any episode that isn't delivering like enough. Like I don't think there's any
Yeah.
episode that's doing too little. And so
Yeah.
far, there hasn't been any episode that's doing too much.
Too much.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
have that in series.
Yeah.
I don't think any episode has overwhelmed or underwhelmed, at least in terms of
Zero.
story content so far. And and that's very nice. I like the way they're handling the way the story is actually just being broken to the audience. We have time to process things. We
Yeah.
have time to reconcile character motivations, and we have time to think about where things might be going, which
Yeah.
is a very useful thing because that's how you build connections to characters. I think
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily like a TV purist or whatever, but I think it's really cool that these World of Ice and Fire shows, Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, they really have a way of maintaining the tradition of event television, right? People are gathering to watch these shows. Most shows these days people watch alone during like their lunch,
Yeah.
eating their snacks or whatever the case may be, and all of that is fine. That's really good. It's a new way to consume media, and everybody should definitely do what works for them. But I think it says
Yeah.
a lot about this show that people want to watch it with the people they care about. People want to, share that experience and make it more of a communal experience. I think that's very cool. And the way that that works is the fact that it's given to us bit by bit. We're able to. I mean that's how you kind of get invested in characters over time. You can have the same investment watching if you watch the entire series all at once, but I think the people who tend to remember the most about the characters are the people who've really spent time with them, and that the way
Yeah.
you spend time is by doing all this reflection.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
I think that like this the show it's doing something very beautiful in the terms of like how it's being presented, like because I feel like every episode is almost like a mini movie, and
yes,
and it's chronicling the life of these characters over like decades, because usually like when I remember in like I think season 7 of Game of Thrones is when they started doing all these weird time skips, but those always just felt so disjointed, so all over
it's
the
weird because
place.
because those guys first, were those even time skips? Like, because what you're saying that they're time skips because that is actually what they were, but they weren't presented as time skips. These
Yeah,
guys were just trying to like
hurry the plot,
trick the audience.
Yeah,
Like,
because
what?
it was like we're so used to this slow burn and all of a sudden we're just like, all right,
Characters are
grab
appearing
your
a
chips, we're
world
gonna
away,
in two
one like
seconds.
within the same episode. Nah. Whereas
Yeah,
in Game of Thrones seasons 1, 2, and 3, you see characters spend an entire season going through their storyline on a journey
yeah,
from point A to point B. Like people
literally
will
in
spend a whole
season
season
one.
traveling.
Yeah, season one, like it took like 2 or 3 episodes to get from Winterfell to King's Landing, But in House of the Dragon, I mean, we are skipping 10 years of stuff, and then we pop back in, and I'm like, I never left. I feel like I know everything that
Yeah,
happened
they're
within
doing
those
a good
ten
job
years.
of grounding us.
Yeah, and the actors are doing a very good job at like presenting these time changes. So I'm like, yeah, this is just it's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
actually,
so
even
beautiful.
speaking of these traditions and stuff in terms of Rhaenyra and Daemon, the fact that they do the wedding in traditional Valyrian custom is, I think, a symbol of how they see their union as being above politics and
Yep.
the will of mere men slash mortals, including the king. More of
Yeah.
the whole Targaryens are closer to gods than men logic. I think
Hmm.
it's also the happiest wedding in Game of Thrones history, unless
I was
I'm
gonna
wrong.
say the same thing. It's
So I
I
guess
mean,
that's a
well,
bonus.
Yeah, Rob's was a happy wedding. It just ended in tears
But yeah, that's the thing.
afterwards. But
The reason I'm not even I'm actually going to put this over that one is because those people were killed specifically because they got
because of they
married.
got married, true, true,
You
true,
know,
true, true,
so I
true.
feel like this is the one wedding where, like, they get married and people aren't necessarily like trying to, like, they're not in danger simply because they got married. They're probably going to
Yeah.
be in danger for other things moving forward, but
Yeah,
at least, at the very least, everybody seemed happy, including the children who just went through the most traumatic 24
I
hours of their
know, I
lives.
know, I know, I know, and that
um,
it was so much. But I think, I, well, we should okay, we should skip. We'll come back to this, but let's skip over to the children, and then we can talk
yeah,
about the other stuff later.
go
So
ahead. What's on your
obviously,
mind?
okay, so we know who stole Vagar. It was Aemon One Eye, and he loses his eye in a way that was referenced by his sister in the previous episode. So what?
Mm-hmm.
Remember how we said we think she's prophetic? She's been saying
Yep.
a lot of things where I'm like, huh, are you foreshadowing stuff? And she talked about her brother losing an eye in this episode, but obviously no one's listening to her. We see how Aegon doesn't like is so weirded out by the fact that he has to marry her, not because they're siblings, but because she's weird, which just shows how these Targaryens think. But
Yeah.
we I feel like
Yeah.
last episode we were introduced to the kids, but we didn't really see them on their own might because yeah, when they got into the fighting while they were training, a lot of it was external pressures driving the fight. This time they fought 4v1 because of themselves, and I feel like there was just a lot more understanding as to how all the kids work and think. Because when Aemon One Eye steals the dragon and walks into the dungeon, then I can't remember which of the twins is like, it was you, and then he's like, it was me. I'm like, damn, bro, he
Like,
really that
this
guy.
this guy's confidence levels
It went up.
skyrocketed.
It went up
Like,
because he has
this guy
Vagar,
came down
man.
from a dragon. He's like, okay, I'm God now,
Yeah,
and that's it.
basically, he's like, if you
Like,
fuck with me,
I'm
I'll
God.
feed you to my dragon. I'm like, bro, my
Like, bro,
man,
you
chill.
just got the dragon.
You
Maybe
just
calm
got
yourself.
here. Just chill. But yeah, that whole like the children were obviously are now players in the same way that you know in the same way that characters like Rhaenyra are, and some of the more established characters are players. And I would even go further to say that there are more players now when they're younger age than Rhaenyra and Alicent were at when they were the same age.
Well, yeah, of
Because
course, because they have really vindictive people breathing down their
exactly,
necks.
exactly. When you have people like
I
Alicent and
I
Rhaenyra out
talked
here
about
pushing their
festering bonds
agendas,
of hatred last week.
yeah,
And that sounds like such a
for
loaded
sure.
term until you realize this is the exact scientific definition of what is happening here.
Literally, yeah. It was crazy. I mean, it was a violent scene, and to see children like you said this when we first started. This is a way more violent time in Westerosi history. Game of Thrones
Uh
saw a
huh.
lot of weird stuff, but we never saw kids like because I
We
think the
never
youngest
saw a
Jace is like
7-year old
8.
take out
Yeah,
like a
a
12-year
knife.
old's eye.
Yeah, exactly. We never saw anything like that. Those punches looked like I was like, damn. And one of those twins had one of the cleanest right hooks I've seen. It was like when you punch someone, you're supposed to like extend and like there's this
Yeah,
twisting
nah, she
motion you do
she
with
put
your
her
arms.
back into it.
She
Like, I
put
was
her
so proud.
whole back
I
into
was
that,
so
like
proud.
not with her chest, with her back, and I was like, damn. But I feel like we saw the what the Kristen Cole training does because it was a 4v1, and by I mean anyone who plays like FPSs or any other shooter games knows that when you're fighting a team, like I play Apex Legend. Sometimes I'm playing with my friends, and like
Oh my
we're trying to
god.
fight somebody who we know is very good, and we go in one by one and die one by one, and that's what these
Yeah,
kids were doing.
facts.
They were going 1v1. Don't do 1v1s. Go together, and that's what I wanted to tell
Need to
those kids.
overwhelm the enemy.
Exactly, because Aemon
It's
has been trained
yeah.
by Kristen Cole more than everyone else. I mean, the two twins, I don't
Uh,
even know if they've been trained because one of them's a dragon
Chris,
rider, so she just
Kristen
thinks
Cole.
differently. So we see, Incel Daddy coming back and being a nuisance.
Oh
Sir
God,
Pussy, what did
Kristen.
Van Cole say? I always forget. Sir Pussy Call or
He
whatever.
calls him Kristen Pussy
It's
Cole.
Kristen Pussy
Oh
Call. Thank
God,
you.
I just small man Chris, man. Listen,
He's no more a big
listen.
man.
Nah. Oh God, like, okay, you know what? In fact, before, let me just say that it's sad how Amond clearly wants to console his nephew slash brother slash potential friend, but he has no idea what to say.
Yeah,
And Jace has no idea how to connect with him either. And
yeah.
I think it's worth asking in terms of this fight, who really is to blame? Like, is it
Who
Amond
is
for
to
being
blame?
incendiary at the beginning? Is it Jacaerys for bringing a knife to a fist fight? Is it
Mm,
Bela for throwing the first punch? Is it the King's Guard for somehow being completely absent from this entire
that
situation?
is a very good question
Or
because I
maybe
do not
yeah,
know.
maybe it's Alicent for stoking hatred between the children,
Or
or maybe it's
Viserys.
Viserys for not being vigilant. Like I just who do we actually blame for
Okay,
this situation?
so we blame
Because I
Viserys,
want to blame
obviously.
somebody.
We blame Viserys, and he's the king, so he's the one person who can't take any blame. But as far as the fighting itself, I low key think it's either Aemon One Eye or the twin who rushed him, the one who doesn't have a dragon. But like
Bail,
because
let's see,
because
Reina.
she's mourning like her mom, like I can't even blame her because like that is a very
Yeah,
traumatic
but he
thing to
makes
go
a
through.
good point though. He's like, okay, if you wanted to claim the dragon, why didn't you claim the
Oh no,
dragon?
that's facts. He did nothing wrong by claiming that dragon. Like anyone could go claim that dragon, and then if you claim the dragon, you claim the dragon. I mean, obviously it's a bitch move, but like he did what he had to do. Like they've been clowning him for years, and then all of a sudden he has the biggest dragon, so no one can clown
Nah,
him
the
now.
fact that he threw the pig thing back at them was just, oh
Homeboy had
god.
those receipts waiting, bro. It's like
He
I have a
was
friend.
ready with that one. He was ready.
I have a friend who's a Man U fan, and like he clowned me in 2014 in May, and I took a screenshot of that thing. Every time that Man U messes up now, I send it to him, and I'm like, yes. So that is what homeboy did. He had been waiting for time to drop those receipts on them. Uh, the kids though. I that whole fight was crazy, and obviously ended in tears when Aemon loses his eye, and now
Hmm.
all of a sudden the Kingsguard conveniently show up after the knife has been drawn. But he was actually fighting pretty well. I think that that's like kind of a sign that I think he's going to be one of the best fighters out of all of them. Obviously, he's older than all the other boys, and the girls I don't think have been trained, at least not trained the same way. I'm pretty sure Damon would train his kids to fight, but it's not shown to us. I just think that based off his personality, he would. But
Hmm.
Eamon, it was a 4v1. That's you lose that 10 times out of 10. But Eamon was kind of holding his own up until he lost his eye. Um,
Yeah, his adrenaline was pumping,
yeah, he just got a dragon, man.
until
Homeboy
it
was
wasn't.
ready. Yeah, homeboy was he was doing a lot, but we haven't really talked about Aegon that much though. Aegon is
Aegon.
like you said the Draco Malfoy, man. He's just out here. I don't think he
Bro, why
gives
are
a
you
shit.
drinking? No, do you know, I really enjoyed when, and it's crazy that I'm about to say I enjoyed something Otto did, but when Otto comes and like
Kicked him,
kicks this
yeah.
guy, he's just like, get up, like, what are you doing?
What are you
Like,
doing, bro?
it's really this whole thing with parental styles. Like, these, I feel like people see the Targaryens as very brash, but really they're tender to their own family.
Yeah,
Whereas people like the High Towers and like other old houses of Westeros, you think that they're very noble towards their children, but in behind closed doors, they're actually kind of like harsh and stuff.
yeah,
I mean, you see how Otto treats this guy, which in this situation, I guess, was kind of deserved. But Allison is always slapping him around, bro.
yeah.
Like
Literally,
their parental styles are funny. Like
it's
you can
wild.
see how it's going down. Like we've been seeing Allison slap this guy all over the place, and now
Yeah,
we see where she gets that from. And
bro.
it's it's
The
hilarious.
one that killed me, man, is when they were back in the throne room, and then she's crying over Aemon losing his eye, and then she just goes to start slapping Aegon to be like, "Where were
Bro,
you?" I'm like,
like
"Bro, what are you asking me for? Like, how should I know?"
nah,
And then Aemon,
Maz was drunk.
he was doing his cops, and then Aemon One Eye was also like, "Who's where did you learn this from?" He points to his brother, and he's like, "Me?"
Nah,
I'm
that stuff
like,
killed me because, in fact, we're going to do like a play by play of that whole sequence in a second. But it actually killed me. How Amon is looking at his mom when Viserys asks the question. And
yeah.
he's still looking at his mom like, and she's like, "Oh my god, this boy is going to kill me." Like this said one more, like he's going to get one more, he's going to kill me. Like I was actually really dying because while he's still looking at her, he's like, "It was Aegon," and Aegon is like, "Eh?"
Me?
Like it's literally all this stuff with Aegon and his behavior, his teenage antics, like. It comes off kind of as comic relief, but I think it's playing a much more subtle purpose here.
Yeah,
Um, and that's to show us the kind of person he is. He's a spoiled, entitled brat who's being forced to want something that he doesn't really care about,
yeah,
and fight an entire side of his own family for it, simply because
yeah,
the other side of his family is even more egregiously entitled.
yeah,
So crucially, these ostensibly comedic moments with Aegon tell us a considerable amount about him, about Aemond, about the architecture of Aemond's character and personality as well. Because by highlighting the way Aegon is, we get to see a little bit of what Aemond actually is like and how he thinks. You can see him being a
Yeah.
bit more serious in this
Yeah.
episode too.
Yeah.
And there's a contrast in the way he handles that situation with his mom when Viserys asks where he heard the rumors. This child is actually thinking way above his station. Like he's thinking levels ahead. He's
Hmm.
playing the game in a way that people his age do not know how to play the game. That was actually a very shrewd thing, and I think it's easy to overlook. But props to him for that. I think that Aegon's response to Viserys' demand, however, was wild because I thought that Aegon might start saying, "Oh, I don't know," or he might be like, "Well, I mean, you and mom are always saying weird things," and he may look at his mother, but he's just like, "Bro, why are you asking me this? Everyone
Yeah,
knows."
everyone knows. Like, I'm like,
That
damn.
I just held my head like this. I said, "Wow."
Literally, I was like, wow. It played out like
Like
Shakespeare. It was just so. It was like a play.
he's
It's
like,
I'm
"What
not
do you?" He's
watching
like,
a
"What do you
show.
expect me to say? Like,
Yeah,
are you really going to have me participate in this farce? Like, I know I've been drinking all day, but I know what, and I still know what's what here." And
yeah,
Viserys, the wildest thing is Viserys doesn't still do anything.
yeah.
Like,
He. Well, I mean,
ah,
honestly, he couldn't do anything because
that's the
Viserys
thing. There's
he
in
has
this
no
one situation,
power.
there's not much for him to do. There's not much he
Yeah,
can do, but there's not much he would do anyway because his
yeah,
power is so lacking. Like this
yeah.
the support, the endless support he has for Rhaenyra just takes the cake in this situation. So
Hmm.
much that Alicent is like, let's do more. And it's interesting because imagine a situation where like children fight and a child loses an eye, and then the response is, okay, everybody kiss and make up, let's go to bed. Bro,
Obviously not.
what?
Obviously
Like, I mean,
not.
I tweeted last night as the episode was starting that that if people thought Alison was angry before, wait till they see her because I knew obviously that like the eye was going to be lost, and just her speech to Rhaenyra when she's holding that knife.
Beautiful.
Alicent's been clearly suppressing all this rage. Like she said,
Yeah,
she's been expressing the rage, right? But in a very subdued manner that is kind of prim and proper. But she really lashes out, and that's why she's her instinct in the next morning is to apologize to her father. She
yeah.
makes that sanctimonious speech, where is duty, where is sacrifice, and it brings up the whole Nigerian auntie
Bad
thing I was talking
brother.
about,
Yeah,
how she's like, I've been doing all this stuff. Where is that for you? Why are you
yeah,
successful? Not
yeah,
even like, okay, how are you doing this and still enjoying your life? Um, how can I do it too? This isn't that. This is like, no, why are you not suffering like me?
yeah,
And on some level, you can't blame her for thinking the way she does, but her approach is just very whack
yeah.
because your goal isn't to win. Your goal is to enable the loss of others. Like that,
Exactly,
that's your
exactly,
situation. Like everything
exactly.
is zero sum for her. And I think that is really her first problem. But Rhaenyra's response, mad thing. Like my favorite line in the episode, probably,
Yeah,
now they see you as you are.
wow.
It's
And
like,
it's true. It's
because she,
literally
she said
true.
it. She was like, it must be exhausting,
Yeah,
hiding under the weight of your own like sanctimonious,
self
like it's
righteousness or something like
your
that.
own self-righteousness. And she's like, now they see you as you are. And
Yeah,
Alison
yeah.
realizes this in that moment. It's like, oh my god, I
That, oh
think I may
shit.
have overextended myself
Yep.
here. And then
And
she
just something
draws
I
some blood, which is very symbolic too.
oh yeah, yep, yep. Using the dagger with the
Yep,
fire and blood dagger. Yeah.
exactly.
And something else that I paid attention to is Matt Smith says that he sees Damon as a leaner because Damon is always
Yeah,
leaning on
he's just like
boys.
watching, enjoying the
Exactly,
show.
exactly. And the second that Kristen Cole was going to get involved to stop things, Damon was like, nope, because he
That's
knew
when
that
he
like
steps in.
that's when he steps in to stop Kristen Cole because he knew that Allison was about to overextend her hand, and he was like, yeah.
Exactly.
Don't stop this. Rhaenyra got this. Rhaenyra is in control of this situation, even though it looks like Allison is. And then she basically secured Viserys
Mm,
to always be Team Rhaenyra no matter what. But on some level, it doesn't matter because like Viserys was never going to. I mean, we've discussed this. Like his love for Emma, I feel translates into his love for his daughter, and he's never going to unname her as heir. It's been what over 10 years at this point. It's like he's
man.
committed to this and he's willing to die on this hill because you can see those children and you can see that they're not black. So obviously, like something happened there, and yeah,
Kristen Cole. He has a nickname that we actually can't start using yet. But I'm going to say that small man Chris is pissing me off. Like this is really First of all, we don't have it. We don't have a precedent for that. For what to do when princes attack princes. Are you
I wanted to
dumb?
punch him in the face when he said that.
Like
I
somebody
nearly
needs to
punched him. Like,
slap this guy. Like slap
yeah,
the daylights out of
yeah.
him because
Also, what? How
I
is he still alive? They should have
that
killed him after
guy.
Daemon, after like he killed Joffrey.
Oh God, like we've had it up to here with him because even the whole thing, like she's like, okay, Sir Kristen, bring me the eye of Lucerys Velaryon. Somebody needs to stop her too, number one. And
Yeah,
then she says, you are sworn to me. That's treason.
yeah,
Bam, like that.
literally,
Treason.
literally, and like
Cut and dry.
it's wild
He's
because I
he's a member of
remember.
the King's Guard.
Yeah.
He answers to the king. He protects the king and his immediate family. That
Mm-hmm,
is it. That's what the King's Guard does.
mm-hmm.
He's not sworn to the queen. That is not
No,
how this works.
no.
Like, and then he's go, oh, I am sworn to you, my queen. I mean, is that really how you talked about your Kingsguard vows before? And now you want to tell me that that's how you think the Kingsguard works? You dumb ass son of a bitch. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, he's probably going to kill Harold Westerling, by the way. Like, the way he doesn't enjoy taking, he
Yeah,
doesn't enjoy taking orders from Harold Westerling, the actual Lord Commander of the Kingsguard in this episode, is something that I think we should be taking note of. But him, and Alicent, the two of them just
yeah.
made for
Bad
each other in their
vibes.
foolishness.
Bad
Like, are you not
vibes.
embarrassed?
Like,
Are you not
man,
embarrassed?
the fact that
Oh God.
Allison was like okay, because obviously we know that this is like a very patriarchal society, and and she's the king's partner, so she's the queen consort, but like she's not the queen by her right. Even if like
She's not
let's
the queen regnant. Yeah, I get you what
exactly,
you're saying.
exactly. So the power is not like if Queen Elizabeth. It's like if Prince what was Lizzie's husband's name? Was it Philip or one of
Philip,
these? If Philip wants to pull
who is
rank,
also
Lizzie can
Matt
be like,
Smith, but that's another story.
yeah, that's true in the crown. But if Philip wants to pull crown rank, Lizzie can be like, bro, chill, because like she is the power. So this fact that she's like she's pulling a dagger from the king's, she's stealing the king's dagger to hurt
Nah, that's the
the future
audacity,
queen,
the
man.
actual audacity. Like
Born you well to do that
attacking
one
Viserys's legacy with Viserys's legacy,
in
because
front of
that,
the series.
yeah, that like that, because that knife says a lot. I mean, we've seen it take some L's. I mean, that knife has only really been successfully used to deal with two people. I'd say that's the
Yeah.
Night King and Baelish. Baelish, the originator of the knife in
Yep.
Game of Thrones, who tried to use it to kill Bran,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Bran was saved by a wolf, and all of that really
Oh,
comes together here
summer.
because, this whole thing with Alicent and her sanctimonious speech to Rhaenyra,
Yeah.
it reminds is I mentioned before how she's now going to be a lot more Cersei, and we see that
Yeah.
in there's a callback to that, like I said before, with the win or you die situation, but specifically
Yeah.
for this scenario, this is giving the vibes of we have another wolf in season
Yeah.
one
I was
where
about to say that Arya and
yeah,
Joffrey
where
got into
Joffrey
the
gets
fight.
gets
Yeah.
bitten by it, and she's like, okay, Nymeria ran away, and then she's like, we have another wolf, and she kills Sansa's dire wolf just because, like, it's literally the exact same thing.
Yeah, it
And
is.
these people, man, like, I remember that's probably one of Cersei's most irredeemable moments,
Yeah.
and I think this goes down for Alicent as one of the worst things she has or will ever do. Like, she really tried to cut the eye out of a child. On some level, you can say she's justified to do that. I mean, she's a mother. Mothers need to do what they need to do to protect their children. But with Alicent, this wasn't just about the child. And
Yeah.
that's the issue. Like, Aegon himself, I mean, he spoke it truly. I lost an eye, but I gained a dragon.
Fair
It was
trade.
well worth it. Otto said
Yeah.
the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
literally,
Fair
it is
trade.
worth 1,000 times
Yeah.
like what they should have paid. Like that eye, like they got this dragon for a steal.
Yeah.
This is
For
the
free,
oldest
bro.
and most powerful dragon alive. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And I
He got
think
it for
that
an eye.
whole,
Yeah.
yeah, literally, I
An eye
think
for a dragon. I would take that trade.
it's an interesting trait to get. I mean,
Yeah.
now we actually see quite a few of the dragons, some, albeit from a distance, but we do see them in this episode,
They saw like
since
five
everybody's there for the
dragons.
funeral. Yeah, thinking about that,
It
I
was
know I made out Caraxes for sure with his
obviously.
specific flying
I
style.
saw Sea
Um,
Smoke. I
Sea Smoke was
saw
definitely there. Cyrax was there.
Cyrax. And I
Um,
saw what's her name's dragon? Rhaenys' dragon.
Melis.
Melis was there.
But I noticed what I thought might be two other interesting ones.
Yeah.
Um, Sunfire, who is Aegon's dragon that has been mentioned, but we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get. I think there's a chance we'll see Sunfire in the next episode, at least before the end of the season. Sunfire is described as the most beautiful dragon to ever fly the skies of Westeros, maybe
Yeah.
ever to have lived in the known world, based on what people are aware of.
Yeah.
He had golden scales that shone like actual beaten gold in the sunlight. He had um, light pink membrane. I mean, his flames apparently were also gold. This is like
Yeah.
this is a dragon that looks
Fine
like it
ass
was
dragon.
made for royalty. It was
Yeah.
interesting. And
Yeah.
Helena's dragon, Dreamfire, is I think also there because I thought I noticed a dragon that seemed kind of blue.
Yeah.
So
With blue fire too, which is pretty
yeah,
cool.
lots of dragons were there. And Vhagar
Yeah.
literally needed her own literal section of the of the island to sleep.
Yeah,
I
man.
mean, when Aemon comes and touches the first time, and she looks at him, she's like, "A kid. He has Valyrian blood." I'm like, "Okay." Goes back to sleep. Then she tries it again. It's like, "Okay, I'm going to kill you. Like, I'm actually going to kill you because you're stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, stupid."
Yeah.
And from there, he starts saying Dohaeris, which is, I mean, I think at first glance, you're not sure that that might work for him. Like, unless you know what's going to happen, you're not really sure that might work because this dragon has no reason to let this guy live.
Yeah.
But I think on some level for Vhagar, and I know here we're really personifying the dragons and seeing them as like smart and sentient, but I think on some level, Vhagar is like, I've lost a lot of people, I've lost a lot of riders. This guy has some spunk. Let's just give it a shot. Like he's here. Like clearly he has some wits about him. Let's see how it goes. And you know, the result of that flight is, I guess, what we'll call the drawing of the battle lines, because
Yep.
that's where he gets all that blustering confidence and everything.
Yep. He
Uh,
basically got a nuke for free.
yeah, visually and idealistically,
Yep.
the battle lines have really been set in the sand, so to speak. Not necessarily in stone, but I'm going to say in sand, because things could still change. But the prologue, as in not the prologue before the prologue, but the actual prologue, is really reaching a fever pitch.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Speaking of dragons, actually, oh, go on.
Sea Smoke. Yeah, I was about to say. We haven't talked about Lenor yet. I think we should say that for the end. But
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Leonor's quote and unquote death, there's another free dragon. So just yeah, I'm curious to see what happens to that one.
That is worth pointing out.
Yeah.
It's interesting though because um, I think what we've kind of been made to feel so far is that the bonds between Dragon and, I guess, Dragon Rider end with the death of the Dragon Rider, right? Or maybe the death of the dragon.
Hmm.
But Lenor is not actually dead, based on what we see in this episode. I wonder what that's going to be like for the potential claiming of Sea Smoke.
Yeah.
But I think also if the person isn't there, then it is what it is. I mean, we've never really seen much of a situation where one person rides where more than one person rides the same dragon, but at least not without that other person being present. So
Yeah.
it's one thing after another. Helena talks about dragons of flesh weaving dragons of thread. The hand turns, which I thought was kind of interesting. As you said, she mentioned in episode 6 that that when, let me put it this way, when Allison tells Aemon that he's going to have a dragon eventually, that he will fly a dragon, Helena says, but he will close one. He will close one eye, and we see what that means here. So now with this new thing of dragons of flesh, even dragons of thread, I wonder what exactly she's talking about. But the
Yeah.
fact that she adds the hand turns at the end of that makes me wonder if that's a statement about Otto maybe being responsible for whatever war is coming.
Yeah.
Because at the end of that, at the end of the scene where everybody is in the Hall of Nine discussing the violence that just occurred, by the time everything closes up, we firmly see who's on whose side.
Yeah.
Like on the black side, you have Rhaenyra, Daemon, Corlys, Rhaenys, all their kids, the grandkids. On the other side, we have I guess, don't want to say Viserys because bro, is he invested in anything anymore? But we have we have Alicent, we have Smallman Chris, and we have who else? Who else is there on Alicent's side?
The
Because
kid.
Laris is there obviously, but he's not really
Yeah, he's in the
there.
shadows.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess we'll say Aegon, Aemond, Helena. But the thing is, Alicent has a lot of allies right now.
Yeah.
Um, the green side is very, very strong. She has everybody we just mentioned, and she has the high towers.
Hmm.
She has, I guess, what you could say is the law on her side. She has the maesters, and she has. I mean, how many dragons now? Now they have Vagar,
Three.
they have Sunfire, they have Dreamfire. That's three dragons,
Yeah.
right? I
But
think politically, she is stronger, but in terms of dragon strength, I'm going to say the blacks are stronger. They have Cyrax, they have Caraxes, they have Sea Smoke, um, they have
one of the twins is dragon. I don't remember
yeah,
the name of that dragon.
yeah. So far, I mean, we're going to say that that's four, and I'm pretty sure that the that Rhaenyra's sons are going to be able to ride dragons at some point too.
Yeah,
So
one of them has a
ostensibly, that's three.
dragon,
Yeah, yes, because he one of them has Vermax. Vermax
but
isn't
that doesn't
necessarily
mean
like able to
Vermax.
fight
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so was let's say five, and I'd say ostensibly the other two are going to get dragons as
Yeah.
well. I think it's also worth pointing out that in the books there is one more son um, that is born to Viserys and Alicent. His name is Daeron, and we don't really see him in this show. It's possible that his role and the part he's going to play, have been kind of balled up into maybe one of his brothers or maybe even Helena. We'll see how that goes. Maybe it's possible they'll still introduce him. If they introduce him, then I guess that technically makes this a spoiler. In which case, it would be of the past. Apologizes to all of you in the future listening to this. But speaking now as it would be of the present, I'm just going to say that's an interesting thing that he's absent.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, because Lena's escape is a is sort of a great instance of adaptation in the story, sort of filling in the gaps for the history books.
Yeah.
Because first of all, it's really cool and funny how Damon is involved in something like this again, because this is giving Rhea Royce somehow.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a comforting writing decision because the world of Ice and Fire doesn't usually spare people like Leno, not just in terms of his sexuality, but in terms of wanting to forge their own path to freedom from what is essentially imposed obligation. I do think it's worth asking what happens to Sea Smoke, like you said. And I feel like we can trust the way this story is being adapted so far. I think that they've done everything in a very efficient and effective way, especially with the characters.
Yeah, I agree. So we were talking a bit earlier about all the dragons that are how the lines are being drawn in the sands and the blacks versus the greens, which was also one of the things that Helena said in her like when she was playing with that spider. But
Hmm.
another part of that team black that we haven't talked about this episode is the Valarians. So yeah, we've talked about how Lena's death and its effect, but we haven't talked about them as players because Rhaenys, again, one of my favorite characters. I talked about this a few episodes ago about how she has a very honest understanding of the realities of the realm because again she to be fair should have been the queen but she was looked over for Viserys
I think
and
I think she's the only person left in, or the only person in existence on this continent that has actually sincerely given up playing the game. Like she's
yeah,
given up playing the
literally,
game
she
completely.
is, and she had done that because she just wants her kids to be safe. And from her viewpoint, both of her kids are dead, even though we know one of them is still alive. But she had that conversation with Corlys about ambition and legacy, and I think Tywin Lannister would love Corlys because he's also talking about legacy every second, every chance he gets.
Yeah,
But we
rich
see
men love
that
their legacy, don't they?
literally and we see that Corlys doesn't he knows that because he's obviously talking about like succession and power and all that kind of stuff and Rhaenys is like yo we know those kids aren't ours you should name our daughter's kids as heirs and he doesn't want to do that and I just think that is so funny because his whole claim to power is through the very same law that he's hesitant or not this very same law is through the very same precedent that he's trying to ignore. He wants his
Mm-hmm.
grand quote unquote grandkids to sit on the throne being called House Valarian
Mm-hmm.
and like overlooking Rhaenyra's brother Aegon, who's the first male child, but he doesn't want to do the same thing for his siblings, and it's just like there's an irony in that, and Rhaenys is just showing how she's not playing the game, but she understands how the game is played, and
Yeah,
she's not
of
letting
course.
ambition or pride stand in the way of what is reality. And it was so sad that scene when she saw the body and thought it thinks it's her son, man. I felt for her, man. She
I
needed a
think
hug,
that's
man.
probably what's going to like ignite the spark of war for her again. Like
Yeah,
it's like, okay, now I've lost everything. You decided to take my son. Fine, I'm back in the game. We'll see
yeah,
how that goes.
yeah,
But yeah, I see what you're saying. Corliss's regal ambitions for his family, I think, aren't just about Rainey's. You know, she's over it, like you just said. And I think a lot of us have been able to see that for some time. You know, him saying, I'm doing it for us, and her telling him to shut up and be real was funny and probably needed. But, you know, what do we actually think? Because, you know, can't we say he's right on some level? Like, is he just trying to get what his family is owed? Doesn't it make sense that his love for her, his desire to be her champion, and his quest for power and influence are all just one big intertwined ball of frustration at this point? I
yeah,
mean, how righteous is he really? Because I mean, he's building a bond with Rhaenyra's sons. We see him talking to Luke in the episode, and I think it's not just about them, this bond he's trying to build, but it's also about him and a subliminal desire to accept Lena for who he is, or at the very least come to terms with the notion that legacy isn't always exactly what we plan. So, I mean, what do we think of Rainey's shutting Rhaenyra's sons out and not seeking to to inherit them? Like she wants to disinherit them. I wonder how that's going to affect their relationship. And I mean, the relationship between her and Corlys, since they
yeah,
see different paths for the legacy of the Velaryon family. And,
yeah.
you know, their marriage, their relationship is definitely like the strongest marriage slash relationship in the show by far. I don't know if this is going to shake them. I don't know if the loss of Laenor is going to kind of make them of one mind regarding all of this. But yeah, like is Rhaenys being too harsh to Rhaenyra's side, and is Corlys being too focused on legacy? Like, can't he, like, yes, he's, you know, him saying he's doing it for her, sure, it's disingenuous
Yeah.
on a lot of levels, but can't that be true while he's also trying to fulfill ambitions for power? Like, can't it just be all of the above? What do you
No,
think?
I don't think it can be all of the above because it's I think it's literally one or the other. Because if let's just assume that Corlys and Rhaenys decide to honor their daughter Lena by naming her children heir, the question is now going to be asked why, and then all of a sudden Rhaenyra's claim is going to become heavily contested because there's now going to be a situation where Rhaenyra's kids are obviously not her husband's, which is why um the Valerians have like almost like disinherited their son. But at the same time, if Rhaenyra is queen, then she can just legitimize her children, so then it makes no difference at the end of the day. But yeah,
Exactly.
it's one of these things where I think like obviously there's a space for compromise where everyone is happy, but as we can tell, like I don't see how that happens. It just seems like everyone wants what they want, and more than that, they want to see the other person lose. So how is all that going to come together? I don't know. But I think like the only thing we haven't talked about is well, two things. One of them, which is just a brief side note, how even though Allison has done all these shitty things to Rhaenyra, and probably Rhaenyra has done shitty things to Allison, but obviously I'm Team
Hmm.
Rhaenyra. She said that she doesn't believe that Allison is capable of killing the Strongs. I mean, to be fair, Allison didn't kill them; it was Clubfoot. But like Allison wasn't exactly complicit in that. So I just feel like I just wanted to point that out because, like,
That is true.
you don't know what
Um,
Allison is out here doing, man.
I mean, all these people are kind of doing a lot of things by association. You know,
Yeah,
it's a lot of indirect complicity.
indirect
Uh,
complicity,
for
perfect.
example, Lena being like, you know, I'm finally going to be the guy you need, the guy you deserve, and Rhaenyra is like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Like the fact that I said before how like it's interesting that she's the one who broaches the idea of a relationship with a Daemon to
Yeah,
Daemon, like
yeah,
it's her idea,
yeah,
and you can see how they've changed over the years. I said she's come into a new sense of her own agency, and him being so detached, you know, he's actually doing a very sort of like uncharacteristically Damon thing where he's like, uh, yeah, I guess, but I don't know. Like this is a lot. Like I
Yeah,
get what you're saying. This is I see your vision, but
yeah,
how are we going to make this happen? It's funny. Like you also see this sort of indirect thinking by proxy with Helena, so to speak. Otto being proud of Aegon, no, well, of
Alicent,
Aemond rather. He's
yeah,
he's being proud. He's proud of Alicent. He's proud of Aemond. He's not proud of Aegon. We don't know how he feels about Helena, and it's interesting because Helena, she's still being portrayed as a weirdo who is playing with
bugs.
flames. I mean bugs, and Otto kind of. I mean, the fact that Otto is proud of anything really just means that whatever is going on is shady because that guy is only proud of shady stuff.
Yeah,
I think that her with Rhaenyra's plan being to free Laenor rather than to kill him, we kind of get a sense of connection with her as an audience that maybe people were losing,
yeah,
because this episode really made it's like the biggest emotional roller coaster that we've seen so far.
yeah,
Like on one like in one moment you're rooting for somebody, in the next moment you're like yelling at them. It's like, why did you do that? How could you do that?
yeah.
We see that with Aemond, where it's like, I don't know, you want this guy to be happy. You kind of like that he's able to fly a dragon, but then you see what that power does to him. And we've said before that power corrupts, right?
Yeah.
Um, with Rhaenyra, in her case, we let me say, like, I think people may have been worried that her ambition was going to drive her to kill somebody who she had no reason to kill, somebody who was very loyal to her, somebody who wants to remain loyal and sort of reconfess his intentions to be the person that she needs. And you can see it from the look on her face. Ewa Darcy is doing this so well. Like when look at Rhaenyra's face, it's like, okay, I really appreciate this, I admire this, I'm impressed by this, but then she's also like, damn
No,
it though,
I'm
how am I
good
going to
though.
get Damon?
I'm
Like,
good though.
what are we going to do about this? Yeah, like I think I think just Rhaenyra's move there was genius, as was her move the in the hall when they're trying to figure out how the whole bastard thing came up, and Viserys is yelling at people, which is something he probably should have done more in his youth. But Rhaenyra's move, like I said, was shrewd, because depending on what Aemon said in that moment, because she was the one who's like, I think it's only fair that we hear where these boys have been hearing this stuff.
Yeah.
And that is so smart, because depending on what Aemon said, she would have been able to end all her ops in one fell swoop, right then and there.
Yeah.
She would have gotten rid of Alicent and maybe even Otto, because he probably would have been executed, and Alicent may have been locked in a tower. I mean, we know that these guys are not, like a lot of lords and stuff. They're not above locking wives away in towers and such. I think, like I said before, Viserys might be having mixed feelings now about his past decision to actually marry her. It's it's sad, because on some level he probably should have stayed unmarried and just supported Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
But even if he didn't want to like find love again, I feel like the people around him would have sort of pushed him, saying it's his duty to make sure that a male heir is brought. And that's kind of another, I guess, avenue of blame, or at least another avenue to consider in the question of who is really to blame for all this conflicts. You can like you can literally keep going backwards with these dominoes, and um the buck doesn't really stop anywhere. It kind of just comes back and it goes round around in circles.
Yeah.
Um, with with all the stuff that Viserys has done, I think it's notable how it affects Rhaenyra. We talked last week about how the feelings of the parents are being passed down to the children in ways that aren't really ideal, and I think the original version of that probably is Viserys and Rhaenyra. She in my opinion, has real abandonment issues. She feels she's been left behind by everybody she's ever truly loved or looked up to. Damon left. Her mom died. Allison hates her now. Um, Kristen also hates her now. She doesn't feel like she has her dad's ear in full anymore. She barely feels like his support is a sure thing. It's really um, a sense of maturity that she, or I guess a sign of maturity that she has the sense to tell Damon all this stuff and show that she trusts him with the information because now they can kind of grow stronger together,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's going to be very useful for her going forward. So yeah, because people are going to, they're definitely going to whisper all kinds of rumors about
Hmm.
Lena's death. I
Yeah.
think in the books, I'm sure you can confirm, like, there's a whole bunch of people that get blamed for this, people who are kind of suspected. People assume that Damon has something to do with it, not just because he marries Rhaenyra soon after, but also because he's Damon and nobody seems to trust him, at least in the earlier parts of the story. But I think Rhaenyra she's had to deal with a lot of gossip and slander, um, controlling her narrative for her against her will. But now with Damon and his shrewd ability to kind of think ahead and understand the mind of the people, having all that by her side, she can kind of make those whispers work for her instead of against her. Because if people are going to whisper now that they had something to do with Lena's quote unquote death, that now kind of makes them seem even more formidable as a joint force that can take on whatever Alcent might bring.
Mm.
And yeah, that is. I think it's useful to kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think there's just been a lot that happened well between Dema and Rhaenyra and even Alice. Sorry, not Alicent. Lenor, thank you. The trio, the trio. I had seen a message from Bankole, on this theory on how like Lenor and Carl Corey, whatever his name is,
Hmm.
the plan was for Leno to die, but Leno and Carl planned this grand escape so that they can leave and be together. But I say no. I think that it's what happened was the plan all along because Damon killed the guard, and Damon had no reason to kill that guard except to pose that as a body. Uh, in place of Lenor, so Lenor could escape. I think that Rhaenyra, on some level, is still like I don't like to use the word good or bad, to judge people because I think everyone's a little bit good, everyone's a little bit bad. But Lenor is showing her good side by that action because she was basically giving this person who she might not have loved in the most like traditional way, spouses love or partners love themselves, but she did love him and thought he was good enough to not give him a bad ending the way Game of Thrones always does
Yeah,
to
he
people.
ended up rowing in the black water like
Yeah,
like Gendry.
yeah. So when that scene happened, at first I was like, "Oh my god, Demon actually killed him!" And then when I see him roaring at the end, I just started screaming.
I
I'm
like
like,
how they ended
"Yes,
with that shot because
yeah, it was
that's it's just
beautiful."
really cool. Like I said, filling in the blanks. That's a genuine surprise, whether
Yeah,
or not you've read the book,
yeah,
and
it
I
was.
think that's very cool of them to do. It's
Yeah,
I love good writing decisions. I don't know. I feel like on some level, um, Carl and Lena may have been into it, but even if they were, they they were definitely not the masterminds.
no,
I
no,
think it
no.
was definitely Rhaenyra's idea,
Yeah,
and Damon came up with the best way to go about it.
yep.
And then these guys were brought on board. The only person who we can really, I guess, cry for is the person whose neck Damon snaps that they actually burn.
The unnamed person.
History remembers names, not blood. Nobody's gonna remember. Nobody's gonna remember either for that guy, and
Yes, that
I suppose that's a bit tragic for him. But
yeah,
I guess we're gonna move on with our lives.
yeah, and the story
What was
must
your
go
favorite
on.
line from the
Favorite
episode?
line is Emma, I'm going to bed, or I'm going to bed, Emma, or whatever. It was that and me when Aegon was like me. Those two is tied. Just the
The way,
absolute shock
literally, this
on
this
his
guy
face.
actually said me.
This nigga was like, it reminded me of that 50 cents when he's like talking about how what's the name of that boxer that can't read? Mayweather was like, why you attacking me, Mayweather? I didn't do shit to you. It was other people.
That's wild. My favorite line probably is the whole it must be exhausting hiding under the weight of your own
Yeah,
self
yeah, that was
righteousness.
a good one.
Now
That
they
was a
but
good
now they see
one.
you as you are.
Bars,
Bars.
bars.
So
Uh,
so yeah, that definitely worked for me. But who played the
for
game
the
best
game.
this week in your
Oh,
mind?
one eye. Aemon one eye, but I think
Amond?
yeah. Sorry, yeah, Aemon one eye. A dragon for an
Interesting.
eye for a dragon. To me, that's easy. Like he
But did
got
he
a
know he was
dragon.
playing the game when he did that?
He didn't know he was playing the game, but he knew he was playing the game. Like we talked about, he's like ahead of his time. He's ahead of the curve. So
Hmm.
he knew what he was doing, but he might not have under. In fact, that's even the more greatness. He didn't even know what he was doing. He just played the game perfectly accidentally. But I also want to give a shout out to Damon. That decision to stop
Okay.
posting Cole to and allow Rhaenyra just owning
Nah,
that
I know
room.
people all over the world were
Uh,
cheering for him.
yeah, I was cheering for him, but I also
Kristen
like
Cole really
Damon.
was with his whole chest was
Yeah,
going to cut out a child's eye.
literally dead ass.
Oh
Who would you
gosh.
say played the game?
I'm gonna say Rhaenyra, actually.
Rhaenyra. Okay.
I think Rhaenyra made some good moves
Yeah.
to strengthen her side. I think now, if you look at her and compare it to where she was at I guess maybe the beginning of episode 6
Yeah.
or the middle of episode 6 or even the end of episode 6, she's a lot stronger now.
Yeah.
I think she was a lot things were a lot more uncertain for her then,
Yeah.
but now she has Damon on her side.
Yeah. That's
She
huge.
has she has like a strong familial unit with boys that are now being taught what they need to focus on. I know Luke is still kind of sad because he makes a good point. If it gets to a point where he's ever the Lord of Driftmark, then
Yeah.
everybody
Everybody
is
else
dead.
died. Yeah. That was
And that
sad.
is true, but it shows just how young he is because that is really how the world works. The
Yeah.
older generation has to sort of go or move on for the younger generation to
To
take
come
their
into
place,
power.
and
Yeah.
he's just not comfortable enough with the idea of mortality to really accept that
Yeah.
that would result in his own power and success.
Yeah.
But Jaceres has a lot to live up to, and I guess in the coming weeks we're going to see how he responds. We didn't see Joffrey at all, the baby,
Mm.
so hopefully he's safe somewhere and nobody stole him. Um, but yeah, I think Rhaenyra played the game the best. I liked when she forced them to discuss where the rumors were coming from,
Yeah. That was a good
kind of
play.
as a subtle attack towards Alicent and her side.
Yeah.
That was an excellent move.
Yeah. I agree.
Probably even more excellent than marrying Damon, because really, if that had gone different, like if Aegon wasn't the way he was, she could have like hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
Like all her ops gone in
In
one fell
one
swoop.
move.
Assuming
Yeah.
Viserys was, I guess, feeling gutsy enough to actually do something about it, like he said he would,
Yeah.
because the wind is kind of taken out of his sails when Aegon says what he says, and he doesn't know what to do anymore.
Yeah. Then we haven't really been doing this, but the kill count of the episode was 7, which wasn't. I mean, I'm counting animals, by the way, for kill count. So 7 people died this episode. I think the most has been in those.
Which animals?
Well, not this episode, but last episode, the goat.
Well, right, okay, yeah. Last
That's
episode it
4,
was
bro.
7 for sure. I think this episode was just one. That
Wait.
one guy.
Oh, sorry. This episode was 1. Last episode was 7. My bad. I had a
Yeah.
brain fart moment there. Yeah, yeah. This
This
episode,
episode was just that
1.
one guy.
Just that one guy. Poor guy got. I mean, I'm sure he died in Damon's arms. That's how he should remember him. And then he got burnt afterwards.
In the dark, bro. He doesn't even know who killed him. What's his
Literally,
life?
man. He's okay. He knew it was Damon. But yeah, that's all I got for this episode. It was so much happened, man. It was like I need to sleep on it like a few more nights, maybe rewatch it to see if this is my best episode of Game of Thrones ever, because that scene in the throne room is almost as badass as the Red Wedding. It's almost as badass as the Night King resurrecting the Whites for the first time. It's like it's that good for me.
Honestly, yeah, it's a very high contender for me. But I definitely would have to do some soul searching
Yeah,
to before I decide that it's going to be my absolute favorite. I know one, like just off the top of my head, one of my favorites from Game of Thrones is season 4, episode 6, The Laws of Gods and Men. And that is the episode that features Tyrion's trial.
oh, that was a good one. That was a good one.
That episode is one of my favorites in the entire original series.
Yeah.
I don't know if this one definitely gives it a run for its money. So if it can beat that one eventually, then I guess it has a good chance of beating some of the others.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I like this episode more than Battle of the Bastards for sure.
Mm.
I like it. I think I like it more than Blackwater. There's some really really good stuff that's still going to come. So yeah,
Excited.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, that is all from us this week, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Today's show was produced by Bankole Mokwede, Bukan Namani, and Chinedu Heji. Extra thanks on the side to regular co-host Jibs and to all of you for listening. We've been your hosts, Ebube and Fammy, and this has been Popcorn for Dinner. We will see you next week. And, hopefully everybody's in a better place. They probably won't be, but hey, we can hope, right? So, yeah.